a self-confessed worshiper of the sun. So when the fall hits, I definitely feel the change in the seasons. And this year in particular, I've been really, really busy this year. I feel like I'm not getting outside enough. Anybody here feel that way ever around this time of year? Yeah, we're in this together.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A lot of us are. The lack of sunshine and the cold makes me want to live under a quilt. I'm serious about that. I do not want to get out of bed. Here to explain why this happens is a happiness researcher, and I love that that's a job, from Western University, Gillian Mandich. Welcome back, Gillian.
I love the changing seasons. I love looking at the beautiful colors outside, but I do have to say I find that as soon as I get home from work, I want to change into my pajamas and not leave the house. So how does the lack of exposure to sunlight or the change in the exposure to sunlight impact our moods?
There's two main ways that the change in seasons and the light affect us, both in terms of the light itself and also our energy levels. So we all know what it's like to walk out in the fall. The skies are gray, it's rainy. We don't tend to get outside as much as we do on a beautiful rainy day, and that can definitely affect our
Sunny
mood.
day, yeah.
Sunny day, yes, sunny day. That can definitely affect our mood. And not only that, yes, stress and genetics play a role in depression. However, there is research to suggest that people that live in the most northern climates experience, 10% of them experience fall and winter depression. So it is a real thing. And the light, it regulates so much of our internal body and our clock. So from our pupils, they dilate based on the light. Our heart rate is regulated by that, our melatonin levels, as well as our level of stress that we experience day to day. Also, not only does the light affect that, but the energy, like we feel sometimes sluggish in the fall. And what happens is there's research from the New England Journal of Medicine that suggests that the lack of light affects our vitamin D levels, and the lack of light can actually deplete them, which can make us feel tired.
Okay, so this weekend is when the clock falls back, so we lose or we gain an hour of sleep, right? Yeah. It is interesting though, because leading up to this weekend, my dogs have been asking for their dinner earlier and earlier. So they every year are sensitive, or twice a year are sensitive to when this happens. Do human beings have the same sort of biological response to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is the light, it regulates what's called our circadian rhythm, which is our internal clock, sort of that 24-hour cycle that we experience. So when we move the clock back or forwards, it mixes things up. So we have that disconnect in terms of our cycles. And what happens is actually it's easier in the fall, which is good news going into this weekend, to deal with getting the extra hour of sleep. In the spring, when we lose that hour, it can be much more challenging. Sometimes when we look at this, scientists call it society-imposed jet lag, because we can all relate to that feeling, right, of what it's like to get or to lose that hour.
So the time change is tough on a lot of people. I get up at 4:30 in the morning, so I always feel that time change even more pronounced, I feel like, especially this one. So how can we ease the transition for this coming weekend?
Light. So there's a lot of things that we can do. Our internal clock, we can influence it by things like our environment, our behavior, as well as medication. So in terms of our behavior, leading up to the time change, really focusing on spending as much time as we possibly can in the sun in the late afternoon and into the evening. And then when we switch the time, focusing on spending as much time as we can in the morning can help to ease that transition.
Okay.
Also, spending time throughout the day, during the day when it's light outside, allowing light around us. So keeping our windows open, getting outside as much as possible. And then at night, reducing the light exposure. So if we get up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, for example, trying to limit the amount of lights that we turn on and to keep them dim can help to keep our circadian rhythm going. Also, practicing good sleep hygiene is a really good thing. So sleep hygiene refers to the behaviors that we do that promote getting really good sleep, restful sleep, going to bed at a good time, waking up. And we can do that by reducing our alcohol and caffeine intake, trying to exercise more than a few hours before bedtime, doing things at night to help down-regulate us, so taking a nice warm bath or reading a book. Also doing things like wearing an eye mask and earplugs can help to keep your sleep cycle regular.
I got all of that, so now my glass of wine is at lunch, is what you're saying? I just want to keep it straight. I just want to keep it straight. Just lost me for a second. I'm planning, Gillian.
Thinking of your sleep,
I'm thinking of my sleep.
Okay, so Gillian, I just don't want to get out of bed. That's my thing. And I want to know if it's just laziness, or can we chalk it up to science and that maybe people just want to sleep more in the colder weather? Or am I just lazy?
So hypersomnia is a technical word for getting excessive amounts of sleep or too much sleep. It's the opposite of insomnia that we hear about a lot. And research out of Harvard's medical school actually suggests that in the fall and winter, we tend to sleep more, and October is the month that we sleep the most.
See, explained away.
However, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It sounds really good at first to get extra sleep, but in that same study, what they found was during the months when you got extra sleep, it was of poorer quality and it wasn't as restful. So people actually felt tireder during that period of time. So we can take that information into our own life and focus on trying to get our 7 to 8 hours as much as possible every single month of the year.
Okay, but maybe Marcy doesn't want to get out of bed because apparently there's a correlation between the fall season and your libido. It goes up.
Tell
us about that.
It feels like it's going up right now. Okay.
Yes. Tell us about that.
So it turns out that autumn is the ideal time to fall into bed. There was a study done that looked at testosterone levels in both women and men throughout the entire year. And what they found was that testosterone levels in both men and women peaked in the fall, in October and in November. And as we know, testosterone is really regulating in terms of men's libido, but it also has an effect on women as well. And not only that, men tend to find women more attractive in the fall and in the winter, which some scientists believe has to do with that increase in testosterone.
Thank God he was here today. Thank God he was here today.
Oh my God. Like, imagine if he was here in April, he would not have been so excited to see us. Sorry.
I know, sorry. The whole show is revolving around happiness and Jason.
So sitting in his seat.
And you're sitting in his seat. So you're real happy. Okay, so our moods, we know that they take a dip in the fall, as you've been telling us. But one positive, though, is that you're saying our brains do actually work better in the fall.
Yes, it turns out when the thermostat goes up above 27 degrees Celsius, it actually affects our brain and we don't tend to think as clearly and we're not as good at problem solvers. One reason that some scientists suggest is because we have to expend so much energy to cool off our body that we can't give our brain as much energy as it needs to function optimally. There was also an interesting study done at a grocery store where they brought in 10 random items throughout different periods of weather, so sunny days, rainy days. What they found was the people that were shopping during warm, sunny days didn't have as good of recollection of remembering those 10 items as compared to people that went shopping on rainy or cold days. So it turns out we can think and remember better potentially when the weather isn't as nice.
That's interesting. In the summer, I feel like I crave like salads and lighter foods, and in the winter, all I want is like ooey gooey carb. What's going on here? What is that all about?
Absolutely. It's very common to see people wanting to increase their carbohydrate intake in the fall. As well, people tend to not be as social in the fall as they are in the summer. And one of the reasons for that is potentially the not feeling so social is because we're feeling that fatigue and having that light exposure affect us. But also there are some researchers that suggest that our body and our brains are craving those extra calories, kind of like a bear preparing for hibernation.
That makes a lot of sense. Gillian, thank you so much for this enlightening conversation. And we will have a full recap of all this information for you up at thesocial.ca after today's show. And for those of you in provinces that follow daylight saving time, remember to tune in to The Social at the right time on Monday, okay? We will be right back.